I just want to make sure I'm at the right press conference here. We did win the game, I think.
Fields tries to get outside. Spins, touchdown, Justin Fields.
It's about believing and just playing for 60 minutes and beyond.
You are listening to The Review on the OSG Sports Podcasting Network.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Review. It's the Online Sports Guys College Football Week in Review show where we look back on the week's action, news, notes, nuggets, things left unsaid in the wonderful world of college football. We are the OSG Sports team, the Online Sports Guys, if you will. OSG Phil here, OSG Nelson there. Jay Wilkerson, 16, also joining me this week. Brother OSG J-Dub, he's on assignment, and hopefully he'll be joining us again here in the near future. And guys, we talked a little bit about it last week, but were you as surprised as I was to see that not only was the Big Ten back this week, they pretty much stole all the headlines?
Yeah, they did. And when you look at Saturday in the Big Ten, what you see is Ohio State is as good as advertised. And yeah, from that performance against Nebraska, they can challenge for the national title. Michigan is much better than I expected. And that Minnesota team is a legit championship contender in the Big Ten. And Michigan handled them in Minneapolis. And then you've got the two unexpecteds, Indiana, and we'll discuss that a little later, against Penn State in the wackiest fourth quarter and overtime I've seen in a long time. And Rutgers is 1-0, and Greg Schiano may have been the difference maker, bringing that Jersey Tough back to Piscataway.
And how often
that was impressive to go into East Lansing and just physically dominate Michigan State.
How often do you get to talk about a team 1-0 and have it be like a, oh my God? And John, that's an
The
oh my
earth
God.
moved.
Well, and I wonder what the pitchforks and tiki torches are like in East Lansing for Mel Tucker after one game when you're sitting there and it's like, okay, you lost to who? You lost to Rutgers? Oh my God. But yeah, I know that we'll get into the Indiana game, and that one, it's just, you look at the Big Ten 12-14, and you can't just sit there and help but laugh at how crazy everything was in the conference last week, just on a bunch of different levels. You just kind of sit just like, okay, welcome back. Thanks for coming by. All right, I think you're good.
Yeah, I think the only game that went it pretty much exactly as advertised was Northwestern 43, Maryland 3.
And the Wisconsin win over Illinois on Friday night.
Yeah, you expected that. I expected Purdue and Iowa to be a struggle and a close game, and it was.
Yeah, and Purdue going without their head coach for that game and still managing to come away with a win. But the game everybody's been talking about, Wilkie brought it up just a second ago, is Indiana beats Penn State 36-35 in one of the wildest finishes in recent college football memory.
Well, it was a wild fourth quarter, and really the fun didn't start until about a minute and a half left to go in the fourth when Devin Ford went in the end zone, and you could tell right when he hit the 1 yard line, it was a oh crap moment because they wanted him to take the knee because Indiana was out of timeouts, and they wanted him to take the knee and run out the clock and go from there and take the win home back to State College. Obviously, it didn't happen. Indiana got a shot. They get a late touchdown and a 2-point to tie it. And then the overtime. And in the overtime, obviously Penn State scores. Indiana goes down and scores. And I give Tom Allen all sorts of credit here.
They scored. They scored with one of the best names in college football catching the touchdown pass. Whop
Fillier. Yep.
I can't.
It was a whopper. That's for sure.
Yeah, I can't.
But I give Tom Allen all the credit in the world for throwing the dice and saying, boys, go win it now. And he put all the confidence in that Hoosier football team. And then for quarterback Michael Penix on the keeper, knowing that he's going to just lay out for any shot, and he lays out his 6'3" frame, puts the ball on the pylon, and when you look at the replay over and over, it's a judgment call. Did the ball hit the ground before the nose? The little part of the nose went across the line and hit the pylon. Who knows?
Steps in. Flush Penix.
You just couldn't really overturn that. There was really no way to do it. And 5 minutes later, they make it official, and the place goes absolutely berserk. And then get on the Indiana Twitter page and see some of the best locker room video I've seen in a long time, when Tom Allen is addressing his team, and all of a sudden there's a crescendo of "We love you, coach" from the players, and they are going crazy. And Allen's caught up in the motions, and he just jumps into the mosh pit. I got a little misty-eyed seeing that. It's after all of what the Big Ten has been through, that was a beautiful moment.
And all right, so here's the straw poll. What's your call, guys? Was it a successful 2-point, or was he down before? Without or out of bounds or whatever.
We talked about this in the pre-show before you jumped on, and you could make an argument for either end of that.
Yeah.
Yes, he did touch the pylon, but the question is, was he actually down when he touched it?
Right. I didn't think he was.
Well, the ball down? Because Penix was prone and had no part of his body hit the ground yet.
Mm-hmm.
When you go back and look at it, and you have to really go frame by frame.
This is Zapruder kind of stuff that we're having to do.
Exactly. It's pretty much, you see like a little ball bobble up right before it hits the pylon. What you can't determine was whether that nose of the football had pierced the line, because it's really any part of the football that pierces the line, it's a touchdown. And there was no angle to show directly that had happened. And so how can you overturn the call?
You can't.
You can't. And I'll give the Big Ten officials credit. They studied this as a computer film, to use John's analogy, as long as they could. And they reached the conclusion that you just can't overturn that. And if they did, they'd be running for their lives, I'm sure, even with a small crowd in Bloomington because of COVID restrictions. But, I just wish that there would have been a packed house at Memorial Stadium in Bloomington after that, because it would have just added to the drama. But, wow, what a game, what an ending.
Speaking of Big Ten games, the other game that probably will be burned into some people's memories, Ohio State just absolutely came out and manhandled Nebraska. Justin Fields, 20 for 21 or 21 for 22 in the game. His first pass of the game got dropped, and I think that was the only pass that he missed the entire game.
Fields looking for the deep ball. Touchdown, Ohio State, Garrett Wilson.
20 and 21 for 276 and 2, yeah.
That's
ridiculous.
Video game numbers.
Yeah, that's Nintendo is what that is.
And Ohio State looks like they haven't missed a beat. They jumped right in. They're going to be in that top 4 in the college football playoff conversation. And they've only played one game, but they're that good.
Yeah.
Well, they got Penn State next. Penn State is going to be super ticked off after the result in Indiana. Penn State might be staring 0-2 to start the college football season, and really in an impossible hole by then.
That's game day. It's the game day location for this week.
Yeah, exactly. So think about that. Ohio State, Penn State's not bad.
But are they elite like Ohio State?
We'll find out.
It didn't look like it in week 1. John, another Big Ten team that had a very good first impression, the Michigan Wolverines.
Bleh.
Looks like Coach Kaki might have found himself a quarterback in Joe Milton.
Milton went 15 to 22 for 2 1/4, had a score. But I think that when you have, 2 top 25 ranked teams in Michigan and Minnesota, I think that Minnesota's not going to go anywhere either. But once again, the way that I look at all of these early games in these conferences, you're going to get some odd results. And I'm not going to sit here and take Michigan and Minnesota in a vacuum and sit there and say that this is how things are going to be with these two teams. So I think that Minnesota will be better as they go. And my focus is going to be on Rashad Bateman of Tift High School, because we knew what he was going to be able to do when he left Tift and went and was recruited by Minnesota. Muhammad Ibrahim had 26 for 140 and 2 for Minnesota. So I think that there's stuff there for both of these teams. And really, you look at Michigan, and I think that you're going to have some situations in some matchups where the offenses will be ahead of defenses and all of that. Oh, yeah. The Falcons lost. Yeah.
They gave up on the last play of the game.
Yeah, they did. So as we're taping, the
Falcons are the Falcons.
Yes, they're falconing. So as we're taping here on a Sunday afternoon, the Falcons falconed, and they gave up a literal last-second touchdown to Detroit for the victory.
All teams
in that game. So what a shock, I know. But Matthew Stafford comes back to Georgia, gets the win, and Phil can't control his laughter, as he shouldn't. But no, I think that Michigan is off to a good start. I think that Minnesota will be better. I'm not going to take each of these as a mutually exclusive element here and go, okay, well, Michigan's going to be tremendous and Minnesota is not a top 25 ranked team. I'm going to give them a little bit of a wider berth here just because of the sprint that is the Big 10, 12, 14 schedule going forward.
Minnesota's fine. They are a championship caliber team, but Tanner Morgan and that front seven of Michigan did a great job of getting a pass rush on Tanner Morgan, going down 5 times in that game. I think that was the difference, that defense be able to get penetration and able to pressure Morgan throughout the game. And then Michigan getting some big plays. It's been a while since I've seen a Michigan team get those type of big plays, those explosive plays, and they were able to against Minnesota. It's somewhat of a setback for Minnesota to me. Just for one game. This is the Gophers that were expected to they were supposed to be Ohio State's nemesis in the Big Ten title game. They still might get there, but that's kind of a tough loss for the Gophers because it was a national television exposure, and they wanted to show that the college football world that there's championship football in Minneapolis, and the mighty Michigan Wolverines go on and they take the little brown jug, by the way.
One more game I want to hit on here really quick, and we talked about it a little bit here in the open of the show. Big win for Rutgers, Rutgers with the 38-27 win over Michigan State. And as good as Rutgers played and as improved as they looked, it certainly helped that Michigan State had 7 turnovers in the game.
Well, a lot of those were forced by the Rutgers defense, and I've got to give them credit. They're Jersey tough. Greg Schiano has brought that toughness back to Rutgers that he had in the early 2000s when Rutgers was kind of the it program for a year or so in college football. At least that's what ESPN told us. But
that must have been true.
Yes,
must have been true. I was really impressed with Rutgers. I mean, you go into East Lansing, Michigan. I don't care if Mel Tucker's the head coach. It's not Mike D'Antonio. That's an impressive win against, Spartans were kind of like that dark horse team that could maybe make some noise in the Big Ten this year. But, hats off to Rutgers. And I think the question now is who's going to be National Coach of the Year? Is it going to be Sam Pittman or is it going to be Greg Schiano?
Well, but I think that sample size withstanding right now, I think it's Pittman's. But I think that if this continues in whatever form it's going to be at Rutgers, I think that Schiano, I think it is a 2-coach race right now. But I've got to give it to Pittman just because of the sample size being larger.
Yeah, speaking of Sam Pittman and the SEC, moving over to SEC games this week, the feature matchup for the boys down south, Alabama at Tennessee, in a game that really wasn't that close. The only highlight of the game being the fact that star wide receiver Jalen Waddle goes down on the opening kickoff after breaking, or I don't know. Yeah, I guess he did
broken
fracture.
ankle.
Yeah, a broken ankle. Big loss for the Crimson Tide, although they just kind of reload when it comes to position players like that. John Mechie the third kind of made up for it with 7 catches, 151 yards. Mac Jones, solid but not spectacular, 25 for 31, 387. But Najee Harris ran for 3 touchdowns, and really Alabama was never challenged in this game, and it looks like they might not be for a while.
Well, to me, it just epitomized what fool's gold Tennessee was at the beginning of the year.
Oh, yeah.
And how much work they've got to do to get to that level, especially in the East. We all kind of thought that maybe they're going to be a factor in the East, but that's well out the window. You're right in your observations. The Jalen Waddle injury looks so much like the Dak Prescott injury.
Yeah, it did.
That we saw, and that was just devastating. And that had, and obviously you saw the shots of Waddle getting in the ambulance because they had to give it attention immediately. So our hopes and prayers are with Jalen Waddle right now. But you're right. Alabama just reloads. It's Alabama Clemson, guys, right now.
Yeah.
It may be Ohio State after another week or two.
We'll see what they do against Penn State, but I just think the line is right now Alabama and Clemson.
Yep.
Yeah, really not that much else going on in the SEC this week. Auburn with a 35-28 win over Ole Miss.
Was it a gift, John?
Was it a gift?
They're talking about another gift win for Auburn.
I know. You ask the boss, she says no. I didn't see it. So I look at, right now, I look at SEC as more chaos than anything else. I think that you have, obviously, Alabama. I think that you have a lot of good teams. I think that you have some teams who are still trying to figure it out. I think that Bo Pelini's time at LSU either is going to be very simplified or it's going to be numbered with his days because of all the points and the yards that they're giving up. I mean, when you have South Carolina doing what they're doing right now, I mean, not in the wins and losses perspective, but just in yards and output and all this kind of stuff. I mean, you look at Tennessee's at 2-3, Auburn's at 3-2. I know that folks are looking at that and going, Ole Miss is at 1-4, Kentucky's at 2-3, Missouri is at 2-2, South Carolina's at 2-3, LSU's at 2-2. So you've got the elite in Alabama and Georgia. Then you've got a lot of in the middle, and then you have the teams down low. And so tell me how this is different really than any other year in the SEC, except that the number of games is shorter.
That's true. And you bring up a really good point.
You do. And, Kentucky should be better than they are. They got to find an offense.
Yeah.
Terry Wilson is just not the answer at quarterback. And it was a pretty anemic performance against Missouri. And I thought Kentucky's defense did a really good job on Connor Bazelak. And of course, Larry Roundtree, it's hard to stop him. But he got his 126 but it was and he got 2 touchdowns, but Connor Bazelak wasn't the exciting player he's been throughout the year because I think Kentucky did a good job in containing him. But there was no offensive support. So what does Kentucky do to render that? I mean, that's the remedy that
you can't score.
Exactly. And they can't score.
No.
And they've got Georgia coming into their place next week, which could make for a long weekend for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Really, there wasn't anything else that particularly exciting in the SEC. So we'll move on to number 1, Clemson, who for them had somewhat of a pedestrian game, but they still rolled up 47 points and beat Syracuse 47-21.
And 7 of that was on a 100-yard pick 6 that T-Law threw into the back of the end zone.
Yeah, which, by the way, was the first pick 6 that he's thrown in his time at Clemson. And what was interesting to me was Dabo Swinney's response when he walked into his news conference after the game, and first thing he asked was, "Am I in the right place? We did win, I
just want to make sure I'm at the right press conference here. We did win the game, I think. But make sure I'm at the right spot. Am I in the right spot? Okay, just want to make sure. I think we won the game."
Well, you've been as good as you have been as long as Clemson has been, and you put a performance like that was kind of Yeah, you got an answer to that, but Dabble's being Dabble. I mean, that's just how he is. I mean, he won the game and he expects it, smiles and pats on the back, and he just didn't get that. And there were a lot of questions of being asked about, okay, where's this team psyche right now? Yeah. They're fine. I mean, they had an off game, and an off game to them was scoring over 40 points.
Yeah, and giving up 21. I mean,
giving up 21.
You still won by 26. No, you didn't cover, but oh well. I mean, the number that was posted, I think it was a number in the 70s for the total, and I think that the spread was north of 26. So I mean, oh my God, you didn't cover.
28.
Well, what they were expecting is a score like the Georgia Tech score last week, because Syracuse is very similar talent-wise, and they hadn't won a game all year, and they were just coming off a loss to Liberty. And so they were expected to put 80 points on Syracuse, and it didn't happen. Hey, you have off games. So those things happen.
It's
and a win's a win.
You're not going to score 70 points every week. It just doesn't work that way. As much as the fan base would like it to, it just doesn't work like that.
Yeah, I know.
The other ACC team, and I say that because they're playing an ACC schedule this year.
In name only.
Yes, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish with a big 45-3 win over Pitt. I had questions about Notre Dame going into this game, and they certainly seemed to answer them because they completely dominated a mediocre Panthers team and showed some signs of life. Yeah, and showed some signs of life for the first time this season and moving to 5-0 and setting up for what's going to be the game of the century part 2 this season in 2 weeks versus Clemson.
Yeah, and I was really impressed with Ian Book. I mean, that Pitt defense is bought into Pat Narduzzi's system, and I thought it has played much better this year, but they just got owned by Ian Book and the Irish. And yeah, exactly. I mean, you bring up the point in 2 weeks, if this keeps up, the hype for the Notre Dame Clemson game is going to be off the charts. That game's in South Bend, and you know, I think I said this last week. I wish that we didn't have the COVID restrictions, because the crowd for that game would be exactly like the crowd when Georgia came there a few years ago.
170,000 people.
Oh, it would be.
Yeah, exactly.
Goals.
And yeah, and I think it's too bad that with the restrictions, it's not going to be that way. Now, some Clemson fans are probably going to find their way into Notre Dame Stadium, but it just won't be that madhouse electric atmosphere we had when Georgia was at South Bend a few years back.
Yeah,
and here's your name to follow for Notre Dame. Sibo Flemister.
Yeah, I like Sibo.
C''B''O, big B, little O. Sibo Flemister, the pride of Pike County High School in Zebulon, Georgia. Sibo went 13 for 48 and a touchdown in this game.
That's your Georgia Association broadcaster, sports anchor of the year right there. John Nelson reeling off the facts.
Pike County Pirate Sibo Flemister, one of the leading rushers in the state his senior year.
The other
Sibo's got to go for a C note, though.
Ooh.
Oh, very nice.
Applause.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
The other game featuring two at the time ranked teams, the battle in North Carolina and North Carolina State. The Tar Heels rolled in that one.
What'd you think of this one, Wilkie?
48-21. I get North Carolina being ranked. I didn't understand quite what NC State was, and coming off a loss to Florida, North Carolina certainly bounced back well.
Well, you're right. They did bounce back well, and State was ranked because they were 3-0, and they actually looked pretty good in those 3 wins. Bailey Hockman came in as quarterback and struggled against that Carolina defense, and then Finley's brother came in and finished off the rest of the game. But look, Sam Howell, that was probably the most impressive performance by Sam this year. And you see when he is on a roll, how his teammates just pick it up. And look at the rushing numbers for North Carolina. I mean,
326.
That was impressive. And that front seven for NC State's actually pretty good. But I mean, they were no match to the running game in North Carolina. And, will this get North Carolina? They've been kind of sleepwalking, I think, up until now. Now, obviously, it's North Carolina State, so they're going to be up for that game, which to me is one of the chippiest rivalries in college football. It's so under the radar. But Carolina's got, a road game against Virginia next week, which I'm kind of looking at because Virginia's tough and physical and can wear you down. And that's going to be a tough win for Carolina. Then they go to Duke. We all know about the Duke-Carolina rivalry, even in football. Yep. It's going to be like the state rivalry. And then they've got their own showdown with Notre Dame coming up on November 27th in Chapel Hill. So you have good feelings for Carolina right now. The loss of Florida State was kind of a flyer, I guess, but there's a lot of work to do for Carolina. And you look at that schedule; they're gonna get black and blue in the process.
And want to hit on the Big 12 while we're cruising through the Power 5 programs. Big win for Oklahoma State. They host Iowa State and walk away with a 24-21 win. And it's not so much what Oklahoma State's doing on offense this season that's impressed me so far. It's the fact that in the Big 12, they're playing defense. They're 4-0. They're 3-0 in the conference. They've got a 2-game lead on Oklahoma and technically on Iowa State now. And it's shaping up to be an Oklahoma State-Kansas State matchup that may end up deciding the conference.
I think it will decide the conference. Iowa State's strategy all along was to bring old school football back in this game, opposite of what Big 12 football is. And I thought the Cyclones did a great job of that. And but look, Oklahoma State has some stellar offensive talent in Spencer Sanders and Chuba Hubbard, and that was the difference. But I got to give Iowa State credit in this one. They did turn this into an old school football game. Oklahoma State answered the challenge. And I was really impressed with the Cowboys as well. I was impressed with Iowa State, too. This was a fun game to watch. And the one that was on my radar screen.
Well, as you are always one to tell us, Wilkie, we are in Brocktober.
Mm-hmm. We are in Brocktober. And Brock Purdy had a serviceable game. I was really impressed with him and Breece Hall. Iowa State is fine. It's just that when the showdown game happened against OSU in Stillwater, Brocktober just wasn't there for him.
No.
And
sorry,
I was interrupted by that little.
You're thinking it was Broggist and
off too.
It was thinking pop-up ads when you're looking at box scores. So it was more like Broggist instead of Brocktober.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Or Brocktember or whatever.
There you go.
But again, I was really impressed with Oklahoma State, and so do you start looking? I mean, the thing that's going to hurt Oklahoma State as far as getting in the national championship picture is that performance against Tulsa, where they barely beat the Golden Hurricane. I know Tulsa is a better team.
Yeah, Tulsa's not the Tulsa of years past.
But I think under the impressions of the committee, they should have won that game by several touchdowns, by 4 or 5 touchdowns, and it just wasn't to be. I remember Spencer Sanders got banged up in that game. That probably contributed to the factor too. So I think if Oklahoma State runs the table, and right now they're in a good shape to do that. I think they're better than Oklahoma right now.
Yeah.
We're about to find out what they've got because the next 3 games are Texas at home, then they go to Kansas State, and then they go to Oklahoma for Bedlam.
Yeah, that's a tough stretch. If they go 2-1 on that, they're in the title game. If they run the table, you got to consider them for the Final Four.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, to see a team playing good team defense in the Big 12 it's noticeable because it's just not something you see very often.
And it's not Kirk Ferentz doing it either. In an 8-7 game that drives you crazy.
One last game I want to hit on here in the first block before we move on to halftime here on the review, which is, of course, the OSG College Football Review Show, where we look back in the week that was in the world of college football. And it's not a Power 5 game, but it was arguably one of the best games on the board this weekend going in. And it ended up being a little bit of a blowout. Cincinnati goes down to Texas and beats SMU 42-13. They pounded them.
Yeah, it was an impressive performance by the Bearcats, too. I actually got a chance to watch a little of this game, and Desmond Ridder just could not be stopped. SMU had no answer for Ridder, and he just, the entire Bearcat team just fed off of that. And then while Shane Buechele, he had hands in his face all night long. That front seven was getting penetration and getting it into his kitchen. And I was really impressed with Cincinnati's performance in Dallas. And, I think you made a great argument, Phil, that Cincinnati should be that group of 5 team that should be considered for the Final Four in all strange years that we have as 2020 has become. I think it's going to be a tough road for them because of the fact that the Big Ten is back and they made an impressive statement in their first week back. But if they keep up and they win impressively like this, strange things happen. Ohio State could go south. Oklahoma State could go south. They could go 0-3 in that stretch we just talked about. So some breaks have to happen for the Bearcats to be able to crack it.
Yeah, but I love what Luke Fickell's done with that team. They're a super strong defensive team, and I think Fickell's going to become if not one of the hottest coaching candidates in the coaching carousel season. I don't know that he's leaving Cincinnati that quickly because it's a perfect fit for him. Mm-hmm. But it makes things really interesting, and props to him for getting that team ready and making them really relevant in the conversation here when it comes to the world of college football. Guys, why don't we go to halftime here? We've been talking pretty close to a half hour. Before I do that, I will do the obligatory promo reel here. Don't forget, folks, you can find us on social media. Look us up at OSG Sports on Facebook and Twitter, along with YouTube. Really easy to find. You can find us on our phone app at OSG Sports. Just look it up in the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. Really easy to find. Download it now. It's free, as John is showing you. And if you can't do that, at least go take a look at your favorite podcasting outlet. We are hosted here on Spreaker, but you can also find us on Stitcher, Google Play, the Apple Store, Spotify, and any other podcasting host that you can think of. When we come back in the second half, we're going to talk about some smaller, more interesting teams like Coastal Carolina, who had one of the best post-game celebrations I've seen in a long, long time after their win. That and more when we come back for the second half of the review on the OSG Sports Podcasting Network.
Like the voice you're hearing on this podcast? It could be on your production too. Just go to goodpipesvo.com. That's goodpipesvo.com and reach out to Steve Henderson on the Contact Us page. Go to the website, click on the Contact Us page, and then see what Steve's Good Pipes can do for your upcoming project.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski & Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Thanks for sticking around, everybody. You have made it to the second half of the review. It's the Online Sports Guys College Football Week in Review show where we talk about all the news, notes, nuggets, and things that happened over the course of the college football week. You are listening to the Online Sports Guys. That's us. I am OSG Phil. He is OSG Nelson, and he is Jay Wilkerson 16. We are three of the, how many Online Sports Guys do we have now?
97.
Plus 2.
That'd be 99.
Yes, and we love talking about college football. At the end of the first block, you heard us talk about all the ways you can find us online and listen to us and download our free phone app and any other way you want to get our content. Guys, we talked about the Power 5, and we talked about the team scratching at the door at the Power 5, Cincinnati Bearcats, when we finished up the first block. And I kind of jumped Wilkie a little bit before he got to make his point about what could happen if
if think about this. All right, if Ohio State is impressive and is undefeated and steamrolling through the Big Ten, and they leapfrog Alabama and Clemson to number 1 in the country, and things shake down enough where Cincinnati can be that first group of 5 team to make the Final Four, would the committee do like what the NCAA men's basketball committee always likes to do with teams from in-states, match up Ohio State and Cincinnati in a semifinal?
Yeah, if they were
think about it.
Absolutely.
I mean, and I know the people in Cincinnati, the Bearcat fans, have this. You've expressed this, Phil, have this massive inferiority complex against the Buckeyes. You know, if you look at your history in the men's basketball tournament, Cincinnati and Ohio State met, I think, 3 times in the Final Four, with Cincinnati beating them twice for national championships. So there's a precedent there in the men's basketball side. But I just think it'd be interesting to see if the college football committee has the intestinal fortitude to do something like that. I think it'd be great.
The testicular fortitude?
Testicular fortitude, that too.
Yeah, what I was telling Wilkie, I lived in Cincinnati briefly for 2 years, and if you ever wanted to see a native's face turn bright beet red, mention that when you talk college football, you talk about Ohio State, and then you say, oh, and Cincinnati plays too?
Yeah.
Instantaneous there.
Spontaneous combustion.
Guys, we didn't hit on a couple things here in the first half of the show that I want to hit at as we go on to this block. The Mountain West also started up their season this week. Not a lot there other than the fact that prohibitive favorite Boise State did what Boise State does, 42-13 over Utah State to start their season. A good win for the Broncos.
Well, that, and you've also got San Jose knocking off Air Force, who I think had a 9-game win streak heading into that particular game. And so San Jose State having issues in the wins and losses department, were stingy defensively. I mean, this was a game that was scoreless at the half. San Jose wins at 17-6 over Air Force. Nick Starkel, your Mountain West After Dark performance, 22 of 29 for 226 and 2, and they knocked off Air Force. So a solid win for the Spartans coming out of the blocks.
And San Diego State also with an impressive win over UNLV. Although UNLV is really reeling right now as a football program, been struggling. But San Diego State did it with defense, as they always do. And so you look at San Diego State and Boise State as the two teams that are going to go at it in the Mountain West, and they start off well. So Mountain West is kind of the only game in town out west, and isn't it interesting how the Mountain West waited way too long to start up and didn't have the kind of bounce that the Sun Belt had?
Yeah.
And even with the Pac-12 not playing last week, well, they're back next week. The bounce just wasn't there for the Mountain West out west.
Yeah. Yeah, the question being, did anybody east of the Rockies even know that they were playing?
If the Mountain West played in the forest and it fell, would anybody hear it?
I think people were aware of Boise State, but everybody else it was just kind of out there.
Yes, and the other game I have to hit on before we move on to the other news of the week, and that's Coastal Carolina with a 28-14 win over my alma mater, the Georgia Southern Eagles. Nice win for Coastal, who goes to 5-0, and they're ranked. They've moved up to 20th in the AP poll after the win over Georgia Southern, who's a pretty decent team. Mm-hmm. But Coastal Carolina's really showing something here. They were playing without their star quarterback, and still managed to put together a good performance, and did what they needed to do in order to win the game.
Yeah, Fred Payton got pressed in the starting duties and did a great job leading the Chanticleers. And really, it was rushing by the Chanticleers that got them over the top of the Georgia Southern. 5 players for Coastal had double digits in yards gained on the ground. And so there wasn't a star in that group, but it was pretty methodical how they were able to generate the rushing offense. And I thought when Shai Wertz went down for Georgia Southern, that kind of took the wind out of the sails of the Eagles in that game. Now when you look at a team like Coastal Carolina, there's just not the Cinderella factor in college football as you have in college basketball, men's college basketball. And then you think of Coastal Carolina 4 years ago winning the College World Series as a Cinderella. Everybody was backing the Chanticleers then, and you want something like that in college football. And really, Coastal Carolina right now fits that bill. They're the leader in the Sun Belt, which really made a name for itself in week 1 and really hasn't dropped off that pedestal. I mean, what the Sun Belt has done in this wacky year of college football is really impressive, that they've been able to stay in the national spotlight like they have. And even with the SEC and the Big Ten coming back, there's still some attention to the Coastal. I like to see where they move up in the AP poll.
They
Fred Payton, by the way,
to 20.
So they're up to 20. Fred Payton, by the way, once again dropping our knowledge here on the show that we have, unlike a lot of other shows. Fred Payton, from the Big Orange Jungle to the Teal Turf, Parkview High School to Coastal Carolina.
Big Orange Jungle, been there many times.
Yeah, I was impressed. Because Georgia Southern was playing, I watched a chunk of that game, and the Coastal Carolina defense really did a great job beating Georgia Southern to the corner, which is what really makes that offense go for the Eagles, and they just shut them down.
J.D. King held to 67 yards on the day on 15 carries.
They could not get up. They could not get to the edge. The defense played a great game with blitzes and things like that. Nice job by Coastal. And if you haven't seen it, look up their post-game celebration.
That's good.
They did a table spot in the locker room. And I'll look at that.
And let's begin the campaign for Jamie Caldwell being coach of the year.
Yes, there you go.
Yes.
There's another one.
Another guy who gets a standing ovation, if nothing else, for doing a great job. Guys, we'll hit the news and notes here, part of the show. A few things that happened this week and this weekend. Interesting thing at the end of the Texas Baylor game, the Texas band did not come to the game, but the Texas Longhorns stayed for the Eyes of Texas being played in the stadium after the Longhorns beat Baylor, even though some players didn't participate. The topic itself has been a very animated discussion for the folks in Austin, and is this just kind of awkward? Is this something that needs to be addressed? Because there's a lot of connotations here, and it's a very divisive topic.
Well, when you have an athletic director who says one thing and then goes back on that initial word, I think that we can all figure out where that reversal in his point of view came from. When you have boosters at the University of Texas, Austin, who contribute $11 billion a year, you will be paying attention to those gentlemen if you want to continue to have those boosters continuing to donate $11 billion a year. It is a divisive topic, and I think it will continue to be a divisive topic, but I think we can all figure out where the reversal came from.
Well, to me, it's a Texas tradition.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to see traditions like this go away. And of course, my initial thoughts has always been, why is it now an issue? When guys like Johnny Ham Jones and Johnny Lamb Jones and Earl Campbell and many of the African-American players that came to Texas always participated in that, and they recognize their tradition. So I just think it's a sign of the times, and it'll get resolved. It may not make everybody happy, but it'll get resolved down the road.
Yep.
Speaking of traditions, an annual end of the season tradition, Army versus Navy, a game that's played almost every single season in Philadelphia. This year will not. It will be played in West Point, New York, due to restrictions on attendance for the first time since 1943, nearly 80 years ago.
Well, and that one, remember, that was pulled in because of wartime. And so that was when that venue change was implemented back in the 40s. And also, when you look at this game right now, Navy at 3-3, 3-1 in the American, and Army, who has just burst out of the starting blocks to a 6-1 start. They knocked off Mercer, who as an FCS or a 1AA team got to go to West Point and play. And Army got win number 6 this weekend. They will be heading to Shreveport to play in the Independence Bowl. Our first bowl bid of the year goes to 6-1 Army in that game
on October 25th.
Yep, and enjoy the casinos and in Shreveport and some of the Cajun food while you're there. Initially you wanted to be in Philly. They played in East Rutherford before at the Giants Stadium. I remember one year they played at the Rose Bowl, and but a cold December day in Philly is just what I always associated this rivalry.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be interesting to see a home game for Army against Navy. I think it's going to be a different dynamic to that rivalry. And of course, that's appointment television.
Yes.
You don't miss Army Navy. It's one of the most emotional games you're going to see, and actually one of the most fun games you're going to see as well. And it goes with the head coaches.
Yeah.
I mean, the two programs have the two head coaches that are charismatic, that are that have a unique offense, a new unique way of doing things, because they have to be to coach those programs. So I think it's going to be interesting to watch that game in West Point.
Yeah, last year Navy beat Army 31-7 in Philadelphia, ending Army's 3-game winning streak. Guys, did you know the previous 2 times before 1943 that the game was played in West Point?
No, I wasn't at either.
1890 and 1892.
Wow.
They played a total of 3 times in West Point, with Navy winning 2 of them.
So you gotta if you're a betting man,
there you go.
Gotta go with the minis, right?
If you're into the juice boxes for Army Navy in December, that's your trend right there.
Little known thing, and before we wrap it up on this week's show, as we've covered a lot of ground, wanted to ask your guys' thoughts. LSU got in a bit of trouble last year after the national championship game when spotted on camera was former star wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr. making it rain for the LSU players after they won the national championship. Beckham has been now banned from LSU's facilities for the next 2 seasons. After saying initially that the money wasn't real, they had to confess actually that it was.
The kick is up. It is off the upright and out.
See 40-34. If Rice had kicked this field goal, they would have won the game in their season opener in Conference USA. But the kicker hits the right upright, the crossbar, the left upright, the crossbar, and it falls forward for a quad doink field goal miss in overtime that eventually would be the difference in Rice winning their season opener or not winning their season opener.
This is a kicker who also had made a 50-yard field goal earlier in the game, so it's not like he was struggling. He just didn't.
I blame it on the goalposts.
Yeah, really? And Liberty, not a shock that they beat Southern Miss, but they won 56-35. Liberty, we had their sideline reporter with us on the X this past week. Liberty is now 6-0 on the year, coming in from Lane 8 as an independent in Division I.
Yeah, impressive performance.
I wonder how much money Jerry Jr. spent to recruit that program. Oh, I said that out loud, didn't I?
A lot.
I guess I better wrap it up then before the mafia comes after me.
Yeah.
You need some medicine for that cough, John.
A lot.
Guys, that wraps up another week of OSG, the review. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. I had brain fade there for just a brief minute. I was trying to figure out a good way to wrap us up.
Wrap us up.
I will stop
Say goodbye.
flapping my gums by just saying goodbye, everybody. Have a great week. Tune into the College Football X midweek where we got more college football fun. And for those of you listening to this show, we will catch you again next week. Enjoy your college football action. Bye.
The OSG app is up and running on your Android or iPhone. Install the OSG app and listen to our podcast from college football, soccer, and lacrosse. What are you waiting for? Download the OSG app today.